First, I want to welcome everybody here to this briefing, and I want to thank my partner in City Hall, President Andy Ginther, for his leadership in this effort. And I want to also offer my thanks to Eric Fingerhut for serving as our advisor on education in Columbus, and to me and the President. Battelle is generously donating Eric's time and his talents to us, and we're grateful for the work that he has done and is doing and is going to do on behalf of the City of Columbus. As the Chief Executive Officer in the City of Columbus, my responsibility includes, among many others, is helping to create jobs in the City of Columbus. And we're doing that successfully in our city. But more and more, as jobs come online, too many of our young people are still not prepared to enter the workplace upon graduation from high school. And frankly, educating our young is the key to the city's future, the key to freedom for young people. Freedom from the shackles of unemployment and underemployment, freedom to advance in life, freedom for greater opportunities for families, and freedom for improved neighborhoods and a competitive city. I care deeply about the future of our city, and I care deeply about the well-being of our children. I want every child in Columbus to have the opportunity for a quality education and a chance to succeed. And I want our schools to keep the families we have in Columbus now and draw new families from outside of our city into the City of Columbus. I want our students to graduate with the skills to find employment, in some cases, create employment in the City of Columbus. We've seen some progress in our schools, in our Columbus schools in recent years, things we should be proud of. But I think we all know that in the area of public education, we have more to do. And I want us to figure out what we can do to make us one of the top urban areas for educating kids in the entire nation. But before we set the course for reaching that goal, we need to have a substantive understanding of where we are right now, what we're doing well, where we're falling short, and that's what this afternoon's baseline assessment is all about. It's just about where are we today in education in Columbus. And I look forward to hearing from our experts. Council President.
Thank you, Mayor Coleman, and thank you as well to Mr. Fingerhut for answering the call and helping to facilitate and lead us through this process. I'm excited to be here today to start the conversation about the city's role in helping to facilitate this community-wide conversation. As I have said and the mayor has said, this is a community effort. This is not a city effort. It's a community effort that is being led and facilitated by the city. We all have a stake in the success of our schools, and finding workable solutions is going to require the full commitment of everyone who engages and the commitment to support shared solutions with time, treasure, and resources. That said, today is not about proposing solutions. It is about better understanding the challenges we face and laying a foundation, common base of information that we can all use to begin to think critically and creatively about our schools. I look forward to the presentations today, and I'm encouraged by the prospect of bringing together stakeholders from every corner of our city to truly engage in a meaningful dialogue about our schools. Thanks again for the opportunity to join you here today. Mr. Fingerhut?
Thank you. Mayor Coleman and Council President Ginther, thank you for the opportunity to work with you on envisioning a better future for all the children in Columbus. Your willingness to step forward and provide leadership on this critical issue offers great promise for our community. I would like to first acknowledge, as you did, Mayor, that my involvement in this effort is made possible by Battelle, where I'm honored to serve as the Vice President for Education and STEM Learning. Education is one of the core elements of the Battelle mission, articulated in 1921 by Gordon Battelle. Our CEO, Dr. Jeffrey Wadsworth, has made clear that we will have his full support in this process and that of the entire organization as we pursue the work that begins today. Battelle's commitment to education is evident all over Central Ohio. Battelle has helped build academic buildings on college campuses, endowed scholarship programs at high schools and colleges, created research institutes like the Battelle Center for Science and Technology at Ohio State, and innovative education reform organizations like Battelle for Kids, the Ohio STEM Learning Network, and the Battelle STEM Innovation Lab. Battelle partnered with Ohio State in founding the Metro Early College High School, which serves hundreds of Columbus students and is supporting STEM education initiatives in several Columbus schools. Now, one lesson that Battelle offers is particularly relevant to the task at hand. As we begin to think about how to improve our education system, we confront the challenge of preparing children for success in a fast-changing world, connected by the internet and digital communications, made intimate by social networking, and personalized by big data. It is easy to become overwhelmed by this rapid pace of change. And so I think about the example of Gordon Battelle. He was in high school when the Wright brothers flew the first airplane at Kitty Hawk. He was in his 20s when the first transcontinental phone call was placed by Alexander Graham Bell from New York to the San Francisco World's Fair, when Albert Einstein published the general theory of relativity, and when another great Ohio native, Thomas Edison, was at the peak of his productivity as an inventor and entrepreneur. In the midst of that world, a world that was giving birth to the telephone, the airplane, the phonograph, and many other revolutionary technologies, Gordon Battelle conceived of a new type of organization that would meet the scientific and educational needs of the future. It is this combination of vision and bold action that we should strive to emulate in this process. Now, as you mentioned, Mayor, today's briefing is the first of 4 to be provided to us over the next 5 weeks. The goal of these briefings is to understand the current academic standing of the children of Columbus and to provide an overview of the central challenges and opportunities facing primary and secondary education today. Because of time limitations, there are many important topics that will not be covered during these 4 sessions. For this and many other reasons, these briefings are not intended to provide you with a recommended course of action. Broader input, deeper inquiry, and greater deliberation are required before a path forward can be developed. But we will make a good start. Today's briefing will summarize the existing educational landscape in Columbus. Presenters will note academic, demographic, and student assignment data that affect the educational outcomes achieved by children who live in the city. Presenters will also note some important policy changes currently in the pipeline that will challenge educators and students to perform at a higher level. In the second briefing, we will explore the direction that the economy of the Columbus region is taking and gain insight into what businesses and location advisors look for when considering investment and expansion, including how our region cultivates and attracts talent and the skills that students must acquire in order to be successful in the workplace. Presenters will also describe the educational credentials that today's children will likely need when they are building their careers. The third briefing will provide a window into innovations in teaching and learning that are changing the way schools work, teachers teach, and students learn. Just as you would seek to integrate the latest technology to improve municipal services, it is important that future educational strategies in Columbus take full advantage of current research and recently developed educational tools. The fourth briefing will delve into the critically important topic of educational support outside of school. Leaders in educational outcomes around the world do not rely solely on the school day or the school system to produce outstanding results. Rather, they have created a culture of learning and shared responsibility that helps them rise above the pack. This briefing will look at existing resources in Columbus and models developed elsewhere to give you an understanding of how the whole community must come together to build the future we envision for our children. Mayor Coleman and Council President Ginther, a few short years ago, you provided critical leadership in developing an economic vision for our city that places us on the cutting edge of the 21st century global economy. You then supported the creation of new and redesigned economic development organizations that are making this vision a reality. The vision of Columbus 2020 says that, and I quote, "In 2020, Columbus will be recognized as a vibrant and successful region where emerging innovation, thriving talent, and a collaborative culture generate one of the fastest growing economies in the nation and one of the nation's leaders in economic development." Among Columbus 2020's goals are creating 150,000 net new jobs and increasing per capita income by 30%, both to be achieved by 2020. These are ambitious goals under perfect circumstances, but the challenge grows infinitely more difficult if our educational system cannot prepare all children in Columbus to succeed in college and the workplace. And even if the goals of Columbus 2020 can be achieved without including everyone, it is impossible to imagine a truly thriving Columbus in which an entire segment of our citizenry is unable to participate in our vibrant, growing economy because they lack the skills to do so. Every city hopes to attract talent to add to its creative class. Columbus will no doubt attract its share, but other cities are also wooing the same people. In an economy defined by new ideas, energy, and ambition, cities that make the best use of homegrown talent will have an enormous competitive advantage. This, then, is the unfinished agenda of Columbus 2020. No city in the United States has fully solved this problem. We pledge our support to you in helping you make Columbus the gold standard in urban education. I'd like to make sure that those who are watching this broadcast and also those in the room know that all of the briefing information that's being provided to you and Councilman Ginther today will be available on the city's website, and that address, which I had here one moment ago, is, what do we do with it? The website address is, here it is. It is mayor.columbus.gov/education. So the city's website, /education. All the presentations that are being made today will be available there. Mayor and Council President Ginther, we will have two presentations today. The first is going to be provided to us by Mark Reel. Mark is the president and CEO of kidsohio.org. He is the founding president of that organization, which has been with us for 10 years. It is a nonpartisan research and policy organization. He has chaired your Education Advisory Committee in the past. He has headed Governor George Voinovich's Head Start Task Force, and he was a member of Governor Bob Taft's Commission on Student Success, Governor Richard Celeste's Commission to Reduce Teenage Pregnancy, and Governor Ted Strickland's Ohio's College Career Readiness and Policy Institute. Mayor Coleman, Council President Ginther, it is no exaggeration to say that Mark is recognized both in Ohio and around the country as one of our nation's leading experts in primary and secondary education, and we are very fortunate to have him with us today. And with that, I'll ask Mark to present us his information.
Certainly. Thank you, and thank you, Mayor, for convening all of us today. I'm going to be presenting to you slides which you have in a notebook, and for people in the audience, there are paper copies if you want to follow along, and there's also a one-page summary. The title of this presentation is The State of Education for Columbus Students. We're trying to capture everything from preschool to college. And if you look at slide 1, we're going to cover 4 key points today, which is growth of the city of Columbus, something that both the mayor and council president have been emphatic about. We're going to compare students in Columbus City schools and charter schools with their urban counterparts and with their suburban counterparts. Thirdly, we're going to cover academic achievement with a special focus on early learning. And fourth, we're going to cover college readiness. And just to start on slide 2, we point out that the city of Columbus is growing, but the
Mark,
rate
if
of...
I could just interrupt 1 second. I just want to make clear to Mayor and Council President that we certainly invite questions
Yes.
at any point during the presentation, and Mark is prepared to yield to the questions to make sure we have further dialogue. Thank you, Mark.
Absolutely, anytime. If you look at slide 3, there is a map of Columbus, and on that map, you'll see in the dark green the city of Columbus in 1950. The light green is the growth of Columbus since 1951, and the pink, in the dark pink, are what the suburbs look like in 1950 and what they look like today. And it's important to point out that if we go back to 1970, the population in Franklin County has increased by 40% to well over 1 million people. On slide 4, we point out that the city of Columbus is growing while its counterparts, Cleveland and Cincinnati, are shrinking. As the mayor is fond of telling us, we are the 15th largest city in the country, population of 800,000 people. In contrast, in 1950, Columbus had a population of 350,000 and was the 28th largest city. And the city has grown from 40 square miles to 233 square miles since 1950, as you can see on the map. By contrast, the Ohio Urban 8, Youngstown, Toledo, Akron, Canton, and so forth, lost 42% of their population, and Cleveland lost 57% of its population since 1950. Cincinnati has lost 41% of its population. So Columbus is a sharp contrast to other areas because we are growing and the other areas are not. If you look at the next map, there are three things to point out. If you look at the blue dotted line, that is what Columbus looked like in 1950. Those were the 1950 boundaries. The gray area is Columbus today, growth areas served by Columbus City Schools. And then the color on the perimeter are suburban districts that serve Columbus students. And this is an important slide because this is a unique situation for Columbus. The next slide, slide 6, points out that the Columbus growth neighborhoods served by Columbus City Schools, and that is the gray area. If you look at the slide in pink, it says that the 1950 boundary area declined by 6% between 2000 and 2010, while those growth areas still in the traditional city and still served by Columbus City Schools grew by 16%. So even within the city, there are significantly different rates of growth. If you look at slide 7, the headline here is that as a result of this growth, there are now more Columbus students attending suburban schools than the Columbus City schools. And if you look at the growth rates, the city neighborhoods served by suburban schools grew 4 times faster than the neighborhoods served by the Columbus City schools. So this is a significant change. The neighborhood school for 53,000 Columbus children is in one of 14 suburban school districts, and those school districts go into 4 counties. And just again to point out that the difference in growth between 2000 and 2010 in the Columbus City Schools part of the city was 5%. The growth in the areas served by suburban schools was 22%. So a very significant change in 2 different parts of the city.
But you're saying that the City of Columbus School District from 2000 to 2010 actually grew by 5%.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. What does that compare with other school districts around the state of Ohio?
Well, most of the growth in the entire state of Ohio is in central Ohio. There's some suburban growth around northern Summit County and Akron and around southern Cuyahoga County and Cleveland, but most of the state is pretty flat in terms of population.
So you're saying that even in the school district there is growth within our school district by 5%.
That's correct, sir.
In other school districts around the state in the urban areas, the growth is and a negative.
That's correct. That's correct.
So, just to make it clear,
Yes, sir.
there's negative growth, negative growth in other urban school districts, positive growth in the Columbus City School District, even though there is extraordinary growth within the school districts in the city of Columbus, but on the outer edges of our city.
No, all of that is accurate.
Okay.
All of that is accurate.
Just a quick question, Mark. You'd said there were no other cities in the state quite like this, but are there cities nationally where there's been more of a city-county regional approach, Charlotte-Mecklenburg, Seattle-King County, Indianapolis-Marion County, where these types of statistics where there are more students that live in the city of Columbus that are attending suburban districts than the largest home district?
That's something we'd have to look at in greater detail, but I think there are a few of those examples. This is an unusual example in Ohio. If you look at slide 8, just to give you some illustration of this, slide 8, column 1 is the percent of students from the city of Columbus. So if you look at Worthington, for example, 80% of students in Worthington come from the city of Columbus. If you look at Southwestern, which is the 6th largest district in the state of Ohio, 63% of their students come from the city of Columbus. Hilliard, 49% of their students come from Columbus. So it's Dublin, 37%. So as you pointed out, Mayor, those suburbs, the growth in those suburbs is driven a lot by the growth in the city of Columbus.
But even in the Columbus Public School District,
That's correct.
it is still growth.
There's still growth, 5%. That's right, in population growth. What we tried to do here on slide 9 is summarize for you in a pie chart where the children in Columbus school, where the children in the city of Columbus attend schools. So if you start with the 14 suburban districts, 41% of the 131,000 students attend school there. 38% are in Columbus City schools, and 10% in public charter schools and private schools. So this is the view that you had requested, Mayor, in terms of look at this as mayor and council would look at this from the city's point of view. So it's 131,000 students in these 6 types of schools.
One other quick question, Mark. There are a number of townships where children would be assigned to Columbus City Schools. I'm thinking Clinton and Mifflin in particular. Mm-hmm. Is there any sense of how many children are attending Columbus City Schools that live in township areas?
Well, we'll look that up, okay? I think we'll check on that so you know for sure. The numbers that match the chart on page 9 shows you the market share for each of those, and the numbers on page 10 show you the actual numbers. So, for 53,000 students in the 14 suburban districts, 41% of the city of Columbus students attend a suburban school. So it's intended to give you the same information in 2 different formats. And then, Mayor, on page 11, you were asking about the Columbus City School District. What these 2 pie charts show you is that enrollment in the publicly funded enrollment in the district has actually stayed the same between 2004 and 2012, but it is distributed differently. So, for example, if you look at the chart on your left, you'll see that in 2004 there were over 60,000 students attending Columbus schools. Look to your chart on the right, that had declined to 48,000 children last year. And same way, but you look at the same time, public charters had increased from 3,400 students to nearly 13,000. And then there are another 2,400 students who are using private school vouchers. So these are all students who are publicly funded, but they're distributed differently.
Mark, do you have that broken down somewhere or just in your head by grade level? In other words, are most of the public charters going to be at the younger ages and then more So as students get older, they more tend to be in the city schools, or?
Actually, there's a little bit of reverse on that. There's a lot of going back and forth, first of all, between charter schools and district schools, and much of it at younger ages. But high school is really the point at which the largest number of students leave the district to go to charter schools. And there'll be a very good study coming out on this in the next 2 weeks that we'll make available to you that looks at this for every district in the state. It's a very comprehensive study by community research partners. So now that we've covered kind of the growth of Columbus, we move into comparing the students in Columbus City Schools and Columbus Charter Schools with the Ohio Urban 8 and other Franklin County districts. So if you look on slide 13, this takes a look at the enrollment. Columbus is, when we compare them to the Ohio Urban 8, Columbus is the largest district in the state. Compared to Franklin County, it's the largest district in the county. But then if you look on slide 14, and I think this may get at your issue, Mayor, that when you look at the growth, 7 of the Ohio's 15 districts with the largest enrollment are in central Ohio, and driven somewhat in each case by growth in Columbus. And so this is, again, I think a significant pattern towards your point of Columbus as a growing region. You look at slide 15, this looks at the number of children who are economically disadvantaged. And I'm sorry to report that this number has actually increased in the last 5 years. But you look at the chart on your left, Columbus ranks 5th, so there are 4 urban communities that have higher proportions of disadvantaged children, and Columbus has 82%. And then in Franklin County, Columbus also is the leader, but there have been, it's worth noting that there are 11 of the Franklin County school districts where 20% or more of the children are economically disadvantaged. And I think one way to look at this is that the city districts and the suburban districts share the same challenges. It is no longer the case that poverty is an inner city issue and not an issue in the suburbs. It's very much an issue in the suburbs. You look at slide 16. What this slide does is describe the number of children with special education needs. And on the left-hand side, you see Columbus is 17% of children are diagnosed with some form of disability, and Columbus ranks 6th among the Ohio 8. There are 5 districts that have higher rates. And then in Franklin County, Columbus ranks 2nd in children with special needs. On slide 17, we show you the type of special needs that children have. The number 1 diagnosis is for children with specific learning disabilities. One example of that would be dyslexia. There are many more.
And Mark, these are, for the benefit of everyone, who makes these determinations?
There's a process that schools go through. There's a team that actually diagnoses children, made up of professionals, various counselors, sometimes a school nurse, but the teacher, specially trained teachers, and they make it's a in-depth process. And then, because as a consequence, children are entitled to get certain services.
Right. Is it believed among experts such as yourself that the standard for making the determination is relatively consistent across districts? Because this is one of the few pieces of data that you've given us that is actually under the decision is a little bit more subjective, right, by the by the district.
This is a matter of dispute in some districts. Yes, there are parents who feel that they aren't getting the services that they feel that they should get. There are occasionally accusations of overdiagnoses. I think a couple things can be said about Columbus. One is they've got a couple really outstanding programs for kids with special needs. And in some instances, people from the suburbs pay tuition to go to Columbus schools so that their children can get those services. And I think that would increase the percentage. And I think what people inside the district have told us is that as the Columbus City school population has declined, it has been more students with typically performing students who've left and more students with special needs who've tended to stay. slide 18 is actually good news for the Columbus area. These are students with the awkward name of limited English proficiency. These are children whose parents oftentimes speak a different language. They've moved to Columbus because of the growth in jobs here. So if you look at the left-hand chart, there's 9.7% of children in Columbus who need help speaking English. You look at Akron, it's 3.5%, Youngstown 2.9%, Canton less than 1%. And the real explanation there is that Columbus has jobs that people move here to get. And that's not the case in many of these other areas. And incidentally, just on the right-hand side, there are actually two suburban districts, Whitehall and Southwestern, that have higher percentages of children learning English than Columbus does. But this is good news in terms of the growth for Columbus. On slide 19, we describe public charter schools. As I mentioned, there are over 13,000 children in Columbus who attend these schools. They are public schools. They must accept all students. They're independent school boards, but they're subject to state audit. The principals choose the staff. They choose the hours of operation. The students are required to take the same achievement tests. There are about 19,000 children countywide who attend these schools and about 100,000 statewide. Another new choice for Columbus families are private school vouchers. If you are a student in what the state calls a persistently underperforming school, a school that's ranked D or F in 2 or 3 years, you are eligible to get a private school voucher. Now, you must meet the same admission standards as other children who apply to that school. But it is a choice that some families have chosen, and we wanted to point out to you that there are about 2,400 students who've made that choice in Columbus. There are another 20,000, however, who are eligible. So just as you look out, this is going to be a choice for more families.
What makes them eligible?
They are it's not the performance of the student, it's the performance of the school. So if the school is considered a persistently low-performing school where, let's say, only half the children pass state tests year after year, the theory that the state legislature has is that these students ought to be given an opportunity to go to another school, and they can choose to go to a private school if they wish.
So are there certain schools that you could trace this back to where the voucher program, the parents have elected to use the voucher program rather than go to that school?
Yes. And just give you a couple examples of the schools that accept vouchers in Franklin County. There are some schools, first of all, the majority of those schools are Christian schools, although there's a Jewish school and there's an Islamic school.
I'm talking about, they come from a school that is now, students are leaving the school and going to another. Are you able to track where the students are coming from?
Which Columbus schools they're coming
Right.
from? Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes, we are. Yes, we'd be happy to.
Mark, for the benefit of conversation, but also folks maybe who might be watching this, can you run us through the financial impact of charter and vouchers? What does that mean for school districts? Just talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Let me also quickly add that the district would be happy to accept children who wanted to transfer from a low-performing school, too. So I don't want to make
another Columbus.
That's correct. They'd be
Got it.
happy to accept them. So it isn't as though this is the only choice. Mr. Ginther's question is, what's the financial impact? The money for both groups of children goes through the books of the Columbus City Schools or through whatever district the child resides in. So if you look at the Columbus school budget, and the treasurer's here today, she gets that money out, and it actually never touches the district. It simply is subtracted from the state aid that the district receives. So the way to look at it is, for every child that leaves, there's about $5,600 that's transferred from the city schools to the charter school. And there are points of view on both sides of that. The point of view of the majority of the state legislature would be the money should follow the child. The point of view of many people in the district is that they have high fixed costs. When children leave, they don't leave in even numbers. So you might have one child from this fourth grade class and two children from a fifth grade class. Doesn't allow them to necessarily reduce the number of teachers in the school. As you know, this is an issue about which people have strong opinions.
So there isn't necessarily consensus as to whether or not charter and voucher enrollment negatively impacts the school districts?
I'd say it depends on what your opinion of those options. If you're an enthusiast for those options, you're going to say the money should follow the child. If you're somebody who's trying to manage a district, you're going to say it makes my job tougher.
But the entire amount follows the student, or only
Just the state amount, not the local.
Just the state
Just
amount.
the state amount. So the cost, for example, the cost per pupil.
That's what I was looking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
The cost per pupil at Columbus schools is in the range of about $15,000 per child, and majority of which is raised locally. And so it's the $5,600 in state money that is actually transferred to the charter schools.
But if I may, the $5,600 per pupil amount from the state, Columbus City Schools does not get that full $5,600 from the state because our local share, our local contribution from our local property taxes reduces that amount down to about 50%, 40% of what that $5,600 is. So the state per pupil amount is a combination of local dollars and state dollars.
I'm going to suggest that we did not provide the comprehensive information about financial data because this is an enormously complex topic. As the comments, the responses to your question, Council President Ginther, have already indicated. So we'd be happy to work with you and Mayor Coleman on arranging to have appropriate information provided that covers this in a little bit more straightforward way, because this is a pretty complicated subject.
And one that we said there's more than one point of view on.
Right. But I would point out that on slide 8 that had been previously discussed, you do see the percentage of state versus local revenue in each district. So the number that Mark referred to a few moments ago, the roughly the exact number, $14,967, is the total expenditure in the Columbus City Schools per pupil, of which 53.8% is derived from local revenues and the remainder from state. So those are the numbers that both Mark and John were just referring to. But again, the extent to which it actually reflects levies and millage and all those kinds of things is a very, very complicated topic.
I think the major point we wanted to make here was that the publicly funded enrollment in the city has stayed the same over the last 8 years, but now there are fewer children going to the district, but more children in charter schools and private school vouchers. Yeah. That's really the major
But
trend.
the number of students within the public system, charter and Columbus Public, are about the same.
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. And if you look at page 20, slide 21, you'll see this is a slide that compares the percentage of children in each district, just to give you a comparison of what Columbus looks like with other districts that have students going to charter schools or using private school vouchers. So on the left-hand side, you can see that in Columbus, about 24% of children use a private school voucher or go to a charter school. Some communities are higher. Dayton actually is the highest in the state at 34%. Groveport Madison, on the right-hand side, you can see has 19%. So we wanted to point out to you these are choices that families are making, and as we think about schools for the future, this has to be part of our thinking. On
Can
slide,
I ask a general question
certainly.
about capacity
Yes.
for vouchers? I mean, you said there was about 20,000 students that might be eligible,
Yes.
and only about 2,400 of them the families are taking advantage of those now. Any sense of the capacity in this community? Is there the capacity to serve 20,000?
There's certainly not the capacity to serve 20,000. I think there's a question about what the capacity is. The majority of schools in the county who accept vouchers are Christian schools. There's some Catholic schools. There's an Islamic and a Jewish school, as I mentioned. And those schools have some additional openings. But you have two kinds of schools that might take 5 or 10 kids, and then a school like St. James the Lesser, which is a Catholic school, where virtually every child in the school is using a voucher. So it's out there. But there's not the capacity to serve 20,000 at this point. Mayor, you had asked for the slide on page 22, which is to compare Columbus. The Columbus 2020 has identified 15 cities that Columbus benchmarks itself against. And what this slide shows you is what the charter school enrollment is as a percentage of the district total. So you can see Kansas City, Missouri, it's 35% of students. Cleveland is a little over 20, but less than 25. Indianapolis, and then Columbus is below those three, but has a higher percentage than Milwaukee, Minneapolis, or Cincinnati. And these are cities where 10% or more of the students attend a charter school. You had asked on slide 23 for us to describe the demographics of students in charter schools versus district schools. And if you look at the bar chart, you can see that the percentage of children who are economically disadvantaged is almost identical in those schools. However, as we talked about earlier, the percentage of children with special needs is higher in the district and lower in the charters. But the percentage of racial minorities is higher actually in charters than it is in the district schools.
I want to ask this other question about charter schools. Now, I think you mentioned, I just want to be clear, charter schools cannot pick and choose who they want in their school. They have to accept anyone that comes to the front door.
With one exception, okay, which is they can define the kids with special needs. They can say, well, we're going to serve kids with autism, for example, or we're going to serve kids with orthopedic challenges. They can define that more narrowly than a district school can. But in terms of your typically performing kids who come in, they have to accept, just like the district does, whoever comes.
Because they're using public money.
That's correct. And they have to report their test results.
You come to the test results, right? Later
Yes,
on.
we're coming to test results, okay. Yes, we have a section on that. Just on slide 24, we're making the point that I think you and everyone else knows, which is Franklin County is becoming more diverse. Nearly half of the preschool children are children of color, and 73% of Columbus school students are children of color, but 85% of Columbus charter school students. What may surprise some people is that nearly half of Franklin County's K-12 students of color are in a suburban district. So we're about to reach a tipping point.
Say that again.
Yeah, repeat
So
that.
if you took the kindergarten to 12th grade population and you said the children of color within that, almost half of the children of color are in a suburban district. So the suburbs, again, same point we made with disadvantage, is the suburbs are not the suburbs of the 1950s. The suburbs now have a much more racially diverse population. They also see higher levels of poverty than they've seen in the past.
But it's still not the same, because we can go back to it, but my recollection, we can go back to the slide, that there is the disadvantage level or ratio still far less
That's
than
right.
it is in Columbus.
You're absolutely right. The rates are lower in the suburban communities. It was the number that we were saying. If you looked at all the children in Franklin County, that 131,000, we're pretty close to the fact that half the kids in there of the children of color are at a suburban school system. But you're absolutely right. The rate is lower in the suburban districts.
So,
Might still be in the city, but in a suburban school district.
Yeah.
so are you saying that that there are more people of color moving to the suburban parts of our community and their children therefore go to suburban schools?
That's correct. That's correct.
Do you sense, Mark, and this is kind of more of the bigger picture growth and trends you were talking about earlier, and 2008, MORPC estimated an additional 400,000 to 600,000 people would be coming to the region by 2030. Any sense that these trends that we've seen over the last 10 years are going to lead to anything differently based on that type of growth?
I think we don't know, I think is really the short answer. But I think we have to be prepared for growth. You've pointed out, if you look at the last 4 decades of growth in both Columbus and Franklin County, it's very significant.
But you have some information on forecasts of growth.
Right,
and
right.
forecasts of diversity of growth and economic forecasts too, right?
Right.
Is that,
And
that's
they will,
contained, right?
and I think, if your point, those 7 large districts that we showed you in central Ohio, that are 7 of the 15 largest, those districts, particularly the suburban ones, are planning on pretty significant growth. Look at what's happened in Olentangy in the last decade. I think they added 10,000 students in the last 10 years.
Okay.
Now, we are moving, Mayor, as you requested, to the academics. And we start on slide 26, which is children entering kindergarten.
And there will be a test.
There will be.
The,
Make sure I do it with a pencil. With an eraser.
so kindergarten students entering public schools take an assessment that's called the Kindergarten Readiness Assessment for Literacy. Basically judges if they're ready to read. And if you look at the chart on your left, you'll see that in Columbus, 34% of children who present themselves at the Columbus City Schools are not ready to read, and the district can expect they're going to need a lot of help. And if you look on the chart on your, and Columbus ranks 5th among the Ohio 8. If you look at the chart on your right, Columbus ranks 13 in Franklin County. It's noteworthy to say that Southwestern, Groveport, Madison, and Whitehall actually have higher percentages of children coming to school, and kind of keeping with our previous discussion about these are not 1950 suburbs. These are...
You're saying that about a little more than 1/3 of the young people that go into kindergarten aren't ready to be there?
Yes. That's essentially the... that actually the term the state uses is not ready for kindergarten. And this is something where the district, legitimately points out it is a much more challenging task to teach a child who's not ready for kindergarten than to teach a child who comes with their numbers and letters and already could perhaps read some sentences.
So I'm just kind of looking over this. 1/3 of young people are not ready for kindergarten and to go to Columbus CPS, but 0% are not ready in Bexley.
Correct. But keeping in mind that there's, I believe, 2,000 students in Bexley.
Yeah.
And same way in Grandview Heights, which I believe has about 1,200 students. So you do see the difference here. And I think if...
What this reflects is tell me if I'm right, the importance of being ready to go to kindergarten.
That's correct.
Pre-kindergarten.
That's correct. That's correct. And the importance of a child's home life. I mean, I think the two together.
Okay.
Slide 27, we're simply restating what I think all of you already know, which is that your point just you made is that preschool is very important and more important for children who are disadvantaged. On slide 28, we introduce, you asked about academics. One of the academic challenges is, the chancellor pointed out in his introduction, that districts face is the 3rd grade reading guarantee.
Okay, tell me about that.
So there's a new law in Ohio. It says that every child in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade will be assessed in the month of September to see where they are in terms of their reading skills. And those schools have done that. They're now providing intervention for those students. And the idea is that those students are helped in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade. They will not have to repeat 3rd grade. But there is a part of the law that says that if children are not reading at grade level by the end of 3rd grade, they can be held back. And there's more than one point of view on this law, but it is the law of the state.
So we don't know what that is because it hasn't been...
It hasn't, but let me thank you for introducing slide 29.
Okay.
because this gives you the benchmark here, sir. You'll see that on the left-hand chart that 61% of Columbus students pass the third grade reading test. Now that's compared to the statewide rate is 80%. And on
You're
the
saying, go ahead. I'm interrupting.
No, that's so 61% of Columbus students pass the third grade reading test, and 80% of children statewide. On your right-hand side, you see the districts in Franklin County. So New Albany, for example, has a 94% passage rate. But it might be interesting to note that Reynoldsburg, which has a high poverty rate, has an 84% passage rate. Hamilton, which has high poverty, is 80%. So don't want to leave anybody with the misimpression that because a child is low income, they can't master this subject. But it is a new challenge for schools because of this, of the fact that they would have to hold back these youngsters in third grade.
So in Columbus' case, the forecast is about 39% of the students would have to be held back?
If they do not improve, which is an important if. See, the law says if you diagnose a child in kindergarten, help that child, diagnose and help a child in first grade, diagnose and help a child in second grade. So what the district is working hard is to prevent that kind of situation. So they're not fatalistic about this. They're actively working to prevent. Right. I mean, there are cases, let me add, where educators feel it is best for a child to be held back, and children are held back in first, second, and third grade.
Okay.
You had asked on slide 30 for us to compare the academics of children in public charter schools to Columbus schools. And you can see on this, if you look at the boxes, you see that the Columbus City schools had 75 schools.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you because somebody's banging on the wall. Can you go tell them to stop? Just tell them to stop. Thanks. All right, start.
No, certainly. There's probably some of the educators in the audience would say that's what they have to put up with on a daily basis too. If you look at slide 30, there are two boxes, one of which says Columbus City Schools, and the other says Public Charter Schools in Columbus. So in the Columbus City Schools, they have 75 schools that... They have 75 schools that have a third grade. So they have 3,581 students, and the 61% pass the test, is what we pointed out earlier. In the charter schools, you have a smaller number of children, so you have 28 schools that have third grade. They are 913 test takers, and their pass rate wasn't much different. It was about 65%. I think the message to carry away from this is that in both sectors, there's got to be a lot of work done to help these children pass this test. And then on slide 31, what we did, Mayor, is you had asked us to take a special look at children who are economically disadvantaged. How did they do? And this chart shows you the 15 districts attended by Columbus students and the percentage of economically disadvantaged students who passed the third grade reading assessment. So if you look at the second column, okay, we'll start with Pickerington. Pickerington had overall 20% of its kids were economically disadvantaged. Of those economically disadvantaged kids, 83% passed the third grade test. In Gahanna, 79%, Westerville, 79%, and you go down the line. So that gives you a district by district profile of, and these are just economically disadvantaged children. On the far right column, we have the pass rate for all children.
Any sense of what's going on in Hamilton local?
In Hamilton local?
Yeah, I mean, there's a 74% of the kids there are economically disadvantaged, but 77% of them are passing that.
We'll make a note to find out so that we can, that may be that information we can bring back.
What conclusions do you draw from this?
I think the one that Mr. Ginther was trying to draw, which is there are some high poverty districts that have high passage rates, and we ought to learn more about what they do. What this does is it gives everybody a chance to benchmark performance. All the districts are aware of this. All the charter schools are aware of this. Everybody who's running an elementary school is really aware of this third grade challenge. So it gives a chance for people to look and see, hey, this is where my district is, or this is where my classroom is, and I need to be higher.
In other words, just because you're disadvantaged does not mean you cannot perform.
That's correct, sir. And I think that's a
Poverty is no excuse.
That's right. And I think that's an important message for people, for us to convey to people. Okay, on slide 32, this gives you, the state assigns a numerical ranking. They mix together all of the state tests that youngsters take. You'll see on the left-hand side, Columbus got a 600 score out of 611, and they rank 5th among the Ohio 8. And among the districts in Franklin County, they rank 16th, again with a score of 600. And you can see the range of scores. Graduation rates. Dr. Stanford's going to talk about this in his presentation, but this information is based, as all this information is, on the 2010-2011 school year. And in that school year, Columbus's graduation rate was 77.6. State graduation rate was 84.3, and on the right-hand column you can see where Columbus ranked relative to other districts in Franklin County.
I might add here, I know I have my numbers all wrong, so I'm not going to mention numbers. But even though we're ranked number 5 among the urban 8, there's been vast improvement on the graduation rates over the past 10 years, to my recollection.
I think you could coax that information out of Dr. Stanford later. You had asked us to give you the enrollment in Columbus schools by grade. So if you look at the bar chart, the kindergarten has about 4,400 children. 8th grade is about 3,500 children. 9th grade, 4,600 children. Graduates, 2,700 children. So this gives you a sort of a panoramic view of the grade by grade of Columbus City schools.
And Mark, I assume that between you and John, this will be elucidated for us, but there are different ways of calculating graduation rates, right?
Right.
If looking on chart 34, 12th graders, the number is 2,913, and the number of graduates is 2,798. Is that the graduation rate that's reflected other places, or how are we arriving at the percentage that we just discussed? Because that seems higher than the...
John may want to explain in his presentation, but essentially there's a 4-year rate and a 5-year rate, and which, as you know, universities often use a 4 and a 5 and a 6-year rate. So the numbers, and we put in here that this was the 5-year rate, and the 77% reflects the 5-year rate.
I guess maybe it's sufficient just for this point for the mayor and council president to understand that there are different ways of calculating graduation rates, and Ohio has employed different methodologies at different points in time.
Let me ask this question.
Yeah.
You know, there's 4,500 young folks coming to kindergarten, yet there's 2,700 graduates. What happens during that period of time?
Keep asking that question. I mean, I think this is a question that school officials ask themselves all the time too. As we showed you, the number of kids in that, stayed about the same. So some go to charter schools, some take a private school voucher, some move to the suburbs.
Are we able to determine what happens?
We don't know enough about those children, I think is the fairest way
We
to say
start
it.
with 4,500, end up with 2,700 or 2,300. I'm sorry, 2,800. What happens to the kids? Where do they go? What happens?
Well, some of them your police department has interactions with, as you know. I think we can say, everybody in this room can say nothing good happens for a child who leaves school.
Some go to other schools.
Right, in that area, right.
Some go to other schools.
Right. I was referring to somebody who left
Yeah.
school and didn't come back, yes. Right, if they go to
It
a...
seems to me that's an important thing to understand.
Right.
why are the large numbers in the beginning and there's a major drop-off at the end?
Right.
What happens to each kid?
Right.
And some of that is the movement that we saw in the earlier charts, right?
Yeah.
The movement to other districts,
Right.
movement to
Seems
charters,
almost-
and
It's not adding up, though. I don't understand it.
Reinforce that.
I just don't understand it.
Reinforce that even more starkly, there are 4,600 ninth graders.
Right.
And there
Yeah.
are 2,900 12th graders and 2,700 graduates. I mean, that's even more starkly. What happens between 9th and 12th is
Right.
would be helpful.
Why don't we work with the Chancellor to give you a more thorough answer to that at a later time? That's acceptable.
Could I ask a quick question before we move off around capacity of preschool? What, our charter schools, if 34% aren't ready for kindergarten, we have this huge concentration of students entering at least Columbus City schools, and my guess is this is probably not completely different from a lot of the other districts. What is the capacity? How many 4-year-olds are there? What's the demand? What are the opportunities? What's the offerings in charter and voucher programs?
Well, the Community Research Partners in Action for Children just did an in-depth study on this, and basically what they found was there are only about half as many places available to children as were needed for preschoolers.
Okay.
And then within that, there's an issue of what's the quality level of those. And I think they found that only about a third were high quality. So there's a community-wide problem of both supply and quality. The slide 35, just want to point out that the district has set measurable academic goals to improve the academic performance. On slide 36, I want to point out that Chancellor mentioned new challenges. This Common Core state academic standards is a big step forward. These were developed by local school superintendents, state superintendents, governors, superintendents of schools, so it came from states up, not from the federal government down. They're intended to be fewer, clearer, and deeper, and they are currently being implemented. I think the thing for you to know is that they're going to be much tougher state tests in 2014, and districts are working hard to make sure that their test scores don't go down. Moving along to college readiness, on slide 38, the majority of Ohio high school students take the ACT test. You can see that Columbus, those who take it in Columbus, and they've made a special effort to involve more children, 17, they score 17. Statewide is at 21.8. To give you an example of what that means to get into the main campus of Ohio State University today, they like you to have a 28, unless you have some special skill that you can demonstrate. But so you can look on the right-hand chart. This shows you the mean of the Franklin County districts. So this is one way for you had asked to compare Columbus and Ohio to the nation at large. If you look on slide 39, you'll see that the Ohio ranks 7th nationally in terms of ACT scores, and that 71% of the graduates were tested, which is a healthy percentage. It wasn't limited to a small number of gifted or talented students.
And it's probably worth noting, Ohio actually is a state that heavily utilizes ACT. Some states, there's two big college tests, SAT and ACT. Ohio is really an ACT state. So we have a pretty large base of evidence on this.
Again, in your question about goal setting, there's an entity called the Central Ohio Compact, led by David Harrison, president of Columbus State Community College, and a number of other educators, and they have set an ambitious goal of increasing the percentage of Franklin County adults who've earned a post-secondary certificate or an associate degree from 44% today to 60% by 2025. And there are other communities that are doing this, and this is a way that communities are trying to stay competitive, and they're linking their goals to the economic development goals of 2020. On slide 41, this is one of the challenges that community colleges face, which is the percentage of students who need remedial help with math or English. You can see statewide it's 41%, so it's a problem in all the state. Columbus has 65% of their students. But if you look at the chart on the right-hand side, every district in Franklin County has significant numbers of children, of students who need remediation. Upper Arlington, 16%, Bexley, 19%. So this is not limited to Columbus.
But I do want to make sure to be clear, so I'll ask it as a question. These are individuals who graduated from high school.
That's correct.
Right? So we're talking about
Even after
even after
graduation.
the high school graduation is achieved, there's still a gap in college preparedness.
Right, and I think Chancellor's point, it's not someone who just got back from 5 years in the military and who understandably might have to refresh their math skills. These are somebody who just left high school. So it's one of the challenges we face as a community.
So this is, all districts have this issue.
All districts have this issue.
It's a national
It's a
issue.
national issue. The thing I think that you'd want to know is that a lot of students who are assigned to take these remedial courses never complete them, and therefore they never complete college. And when you consider the fact that a majority of African American and Hispanic college students are enrolled in community colleges, this is really an important problem to solve, because otherwise they're cut off right at the beginning of their college.
It's probably also worth relating to the previous point that Mark made about the plan to increase the rigor of the tests, of the graduation tests. A huge impetus behind the development of the Common Core, to which Mark referred, and the new test that will come online in 2014, is to align high school graduation standards with college readiness levels. So the fact that we could have a high school graduate who's not ready for college is an issue that policymakers have been struggling to address.
It's also why we need to be talking more about, even in these discussions, about not just K through 12, but maybe pre-K through 14.
That's right.
After high school, what happens at, those 2 or 3 years after high school?
Yes.
It's equally as important as what happens right in high school.
Right. No, we agree. That's why we titled this at your request, Preschool to College.
And point out, as I did, that that's why our next briefing is going to address the question of what skills are employers looking for, because we have to make sure all of that is aligned. Not only the graduation from high school is aligned to college, but also that is aligned to what skills the growing employers in Columbus are looking for.
And then you had asked for another national comparison on page 42. K-12 schools take what's called the National Assessment of Educational Progress. You can see Ohio's score is slightly above the national average, but I think most people would agree there's room for improvement. Slide 43 is one that you specifically requested about comparing education among adults with the other benchmark cities. So if you look at the left-hand column, 39% of Columbus adults have earned a 2-year degree or higher. 32% have earned a 4-year degree or higher. But when you compare Columbus to, for example, Raleigh is we are 15 points lower in 2-year degrees and 14 points lower in 4-year degrees than Raleigh. And I think there's broad agreement that these kinds of credentials really matter. On slide 44, you asked us to compare the U.S. to other countries. You can see on all three measures that the U.S. is not number one. There's a lot of effort going on nationally. One of President Obama's initiatives is to regain the initiative in terms of college graduation, but these skills as well. So just to summarize and close this, Mayor, we have tried to provide you with information about the growth, comparing these students in Columbus to students in other districts, tried to give you information on academic achievement and on college readiness, and we have also prepared a one-page summary which is available at People's Places.
Mark, thank you very much for that presentation, and I think it's evident to everyone how much work went into preparing it. So we appreciate not only your time today, but all the extensive hours that went into preparing
and
that.
If I could just for a second thank my colleagues, Ann, Erica, and Mary, for the hard work they put into this.
Thank you. I'm going to keep us moving along quickly because otherwise we'll run out of time, and Dr. Stanford will kick me under the table if I don't give him enough time to cover his presentation. As we have seen Dr. Stanford sitting at the table and heard a little bit from him, but let me introduce him formally to you, Mayor and Council President. Dr. Stanford is the Deputy Superintendent for Columbus City Schools. He's responsible for 13 academic and operational departments. Prior to becoming the Deputy Superintendent, he was the district's Chief Operating Officer, where he was responsible for 11 departments with a collective budget of approximately $176 million and an estimated 2,000 team members. Dr. Stanford has more than 14 years of senior executive experience in the public and private sector. Most recently, before joining the Columbus City Schools, he was the Executive Assistant for Education Policy to Governor Ted Strickland. Dr. Stanford began his professional career as an assistant professor at the Ohio State University School of Public Policy and Management, which is, of course, now the John Glenn School of Public Affairs. He also served as Deputy Director of Research Services and the Urban Commission's Staff Director, the Director of Education Information Center, and the Deputy Director of Legislative Services with the Ohio School Boards Association. After leaving the Ohio School Boards Association, he joined Columbus City Schools as a supervisor of legislative services. He has a bachelor's and master's degree from Central Michigan University, and his JD and PhD degrees from The Ohio State University. Dr. Stanford is going to review with us some information relevant to the Columbus City Schools that builds on the presentation we've heard from Mark.
Thank you. I want to call you Chancellor. Thank you, Mr. Fingerhut. And thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. President, for allowing Columbus City Schools this opportunity to share this information with you this afternoon and the listening audience in the city of Columbus. But before I get started, I wanted to acknowledge that we have one board member from Columbus City Schools in the audience today, and that's Brian Stewart. I've been watching the door diligently, and I don't believe there has been any other board member to walk in since we began this afternoon, but I definitely want to acknowledge Mr. Stewart's presence here tonight. So when we look at Columbus City Schools, we have been working with a mission for the last several years that each student is highly educated, prepared for leadership and service, and empowered for success as a citizen in a global community. Our vision in trying to accomplish that mission has been that 100% student success is what we are striving for, and that every student is college and career ready, or college and workforce ready. And it's very interesting, as Mr. Real was giving his presentation, and in a former life, when we talk about college and workforce ready or college and career readiness, there's a lot of research that has been around for a number of years to suggest that college readiness is the equivalent of workforce ready, meaning that if you are going to earn a living wage in today's economy, you're going to have some training beyond high school, whether it's a certificate, whether it's some type of career training, technical training such as to be a welder, or whether it's a 2-year or 4-year degree. And when we look at Columbus City Schools' end goals, what we are striving to accomplish each and every year is to meet certain student academic goals, to make sure that our students are prepared for citizenship, and that they also are prepared with life and work skills. The way we operate within the district, we operate with this model of 100% student success. And with this model, as you can see at the bottom, we really want our staff members to be steeped in content knowledge on the subjects that they're teaching to our students, and that they become professional masters in that material with their students. And we expect them to work in teams. We have a concept within the district called professional learning communities. And with this concept of professional learning communities, our teachers and principals are working together in teams to study the data, analyze the data, and then develop strategies that addresses the problems from the data that has been identified. And through this effort of professional learning communities, ongoing professional development that is job embedded, then we will achieve a level of organizational excellence that will serve every student in the school district and achieve 100% student success. So when we look at the demographics of the data of the district, I thought it would be interesting to provide the two of you and our audience a little bit of a comparison between Columbus, Cincinnati, and Reynoldsburg. When you look at square miles in Columbus City Schools, there are 220 square miles. Cincinnati has 91 square miles, and Reynoldsburg 11 square miles. And when you look at the number of high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools, there are about a total of 118 school buildings in the city of Columbus, 56 in Cincinnati, and 16 within Reynoldsburg City Schools that are spread across those various different grade levels. And when we look at high school transportation, Columbus City Schools provides high school transportation. Cincinnati does not provide it through the school district. What they do is they offer the families of Cincinnati a bus pass through their Metro bus system. And so the high school students can use the Metro system to get back and forth to school. And with Reynoldsburg, of course, they also provide transportation to their high school students through the school district. So when we look at, did you know this about Columbus City Schools? There are about 95 different languages that are spoken in the homes of our students in Columbus City Schools. We serve about 60,000 school meals each day to the students of our district. We have 11.5% of our student population that speak English as a second language. And this is really important because I don't want to confuse anyone that saw the stat that was in Mr. Real's presentation, because when we look at limited English proficient students, those are students who have not developed the skills, the English skills, strong enough to be in the classroom and be able to function without additional support.
Is there a way to find out whether they're from families that have come to, are new to Columbus? Either of you. Just, I don't know.
We would have to look into that and provide that information. I would say the quickest answer would be yes, they are new to Columbus, but they may have been here for a few years after arriving to Columbus. And in this percentage number, they may have been here for a year or they may have been here for a couple of years because they're still trying to master the English language in order to not be included in this group of students. This particular statistic not only represents that group of students who are receiving the limited English proficient services that Mr. Real spoke about, but also it represents students who may not be receiving those services in Columbus City Schools, because some parents, when they arrive to the country, they will not take advantage of the limited English proficient services because they want their students to be in the classroom with all the other kids.
It's a big number.
Yes.
7.5%.
Yes. And so I wanted to include that statistic beyond the limited English proficient to, again, give you a sense of the expanse of the students that have English as a second language within Columbus City Schools. On a daily basis, we transport about 32,000 students every day through about roughly 800 different routes across the city, bus routes across the city of Columbus. We have 17.7% of our student population that has been identified as gifted and talented. We have a mobility rate of about 19.7%, and what that means is that students are attending more than one school in each given school year. We have about 104 nurses on staff serving our students, 130 counselors, 23 social workers, and about 60 psychologists. And I wanted to add on this slide also, when Mr. Real was presenting the data about our children with disabilities, one of the things I wanted to bring to your attention is that there's been a change at the state level with our county Department of Developmental Disabilities. Many may know this agency as the MRDD. This state policy change As a result of the state policy change, the County Department of Developmental Disabilities are reducing reducing the amount of services to that population of students at the county level, and so many of those students will more than likely end up in Columbus City schools, and Columbus City schools will be required to serve those students and meet their needs within our school district. The next slide of Did You Know is dedicated to our staff in the Columbus City schools. And as you can see from this slide, about half of the employee groups that are represented on this slide are about halfway through their professional careers. If you think about the public sector, most people retire about at 30 years. And as you can see with each of the employee groups, the average years of services are about midway through that 30-year period. We have over 3,000 teachers in the school district with an average salary of about $58,290. Instructional assistants, we have about average years of service, 10.8 years, and with an average salary of $18,955. Other certificated, and I know you and those in the audience are probably wondering what is other certificated. Those are our nurses, social workers, counselors, and psychologists, and they are. I wanted to pull them out and have them as an identified employee group because they also require a certificate in order to be employed in their positions, just like our teachers. But of course, they provide a different type of services for our students. Our classified employees are bus drivers, our food service workers, our secretaries within our school district. We have about 1,700 of those individuals with an average years of service at 11.4 and an average salary of $33,833. Administrators, we have an average years of service of 16.6 years and an average salary of $93,000. I do want to point out for you and President Ginther that of that 298 administrators, roughly about 185 of them are principals and assistant principals in our building. And so that leaves about 113 individuals who are a part of our central office. The next Did You Know slide is focused on our teaching population, and the last time I checked, we had about 122 of our teachers who are nationally board certified teachers. And the National Board Certified Teacher Program is a very distinguished program at the national level that is very rigorous, that teachers volunteer to be a part of, and they go through this rigorous training and they achieve a higher level.
How many of those?
122. And my understanding is that we are the #1 district in the state of Ohio with the number of National Board Certified Teachers on staff. And again, this is a very rigorous teacher training program where teachers are trained at a higher level of proficiency and skills in order to serve students. But when we look at our teaching staff, we have about 642 teachers who have a bachelor's degree, which represents 21% of our teaching force. 528 have a bachelor's degree plus an addition over 30 years of service, and they represent about 17% of our district. About 1,700 have a master's degree, which represents a little bit more than half of our teaching population. And 63 have a master's plus 30 years, and 25 have a doctorate degree. I also want to note on this slide that all of our principals and assistant principals have master's degrees because that's a part of their requirement in order to hold that position. And so when we look at the 115 individuals I spoke of on the last slide, they all have a master's degree in education. On the next slide, we want to show a little bit of the academic performance of our school district, and there's definitely a lot more data that could be presented, but again, given the amount of time available for this session, I just wanted to, identify a couple of highlighted academic performance indicators for you all this afternoon. And so when we look at the graduation rate, Mr. Fingerhut and Mr. Real were discussing that over the years, the state of Ohio has used a different type of calculation to calculate the graduation rate. And I think you, Mr. Mayor, indicated that Columbus has made significant gains in graduation rates over the years. And what this chart shows is just that. Beginning in 2001, the graduation rate was about 54.8%. And as we look at the 2011 graduation rate, it would have been 85.1% under the legacy calculation. And under the legacy calculation, it wasn't a strict 4-year graduation rate. And so students who may have taken a couple of additional years to finish up their degree, they were still counted in that legacy graduation rate. And that is especially significant for our special education population, our children with disabilities, because the federal law, which is called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, requires school districts to educate children with disabilities until they become 22 years old. And so even though they may have done really well academically and have met all of the academic requirements within a 4-year period, they may still stay with us past the 4 years to receive additional training and life skill educational opportunity as well. And if their individual education plan requires that as a part of their educational growth, then we have that obligation to provide those educational services until they turn 22 years old. And again, under the old graduation calculation, that group of students would be captured in that old calculation.
Did that formula not change over the 10-year period of time?
There were tweaks to that legacy formula over that 10-year period of time, but the basic foundation of it was the same. And so that's why it's really good to show the growth over the 10-year period. And when you look at the next slide, which gives us the calculation of what is referred to as the cohort graduation calculation, and that's the new calculation. It's such a different calculation. You don't want to compare it over the 10-year period because you really would be comparing apples to oranges. And so when you look at this slide and you look at on the left-hand side, you will see what that legacy rate was for 2010, and you will also see for 2011, I have a typo there, that 85.2% should be 2011. But in 2010, that legacy rate was 77.6%. And if you look a little bit to your right, you will see what the cohort, the new calculation is for 2010. It would have been 72.2% if that new calculation rate had been in effect.
The major difference you were saying, John, is that this is a 4-year calculation, so students can't continue on and complete later after the 4-year period.
Yes, there are some nuances to that, but again, the basic concept is that it's a 4-year calculation.
Thank you.
And so then when we look at the 2011 legacy, it would have been 85.2%. When you look at the new cohort for 2011, it is 75.8%. When the new report cards are released for this year, which reflects the 2010-2011 school year, you will see the new cohort graduation rate on that report card, which is the 75.8%. And you won't, and I don't believe they will show you the 85.2%, which is the legacy rate. But last year's report card had the legacy rate and the new cohort rate to get us transitioned to the new system. Now, when we look at our college and career readiness, and this data is provided through the National Student Clearinghouse, which is a national nonprofit organization that really acts as a central collection place for all college data at our universities and colleges across the country. And we look specifically at Columbus City Schools. The percentage of high school students who were enrolled immediately after high school in a college for the fall of, in 2004 was about 46%, and in 2009 it was 51%. Percentage of high school students enrolled anytime during year one, so they may have not been enrolled immediately after high school in the beginning of the fall, but sometime during that first year, they were enrolled in college. That number is 54% in 2004 and 60% in 2009. High school students enrolled anytime during the first 2 years, 60% in 2004, 66% in 2009. And those students who matriculated from the freshman year to the sophomore year was 76% in 2004 and 74% in 2009. This number in 2009, the 74%, is very interesting when you compare it to the national number and the number for Ohio. The national number was 77%, and the Ohio percentage point was 75.5%. So you can see the matriculation rate from the freshman year to the sophomore year. Columbus City School students performed about at the same rate of matriculating to the second year as other students nationally or in the state of Ohio. And when you look at the accomplishment of our students in the Career Center programs, and under state law, the urban districts are allowed to have their own individual career centers as opposed to a joint vocational career center that you may see in some other parts of the state. And Columbus City School has two primary career centers, the Fort Hays Career Center and the Downtown High School. What this table at the bottom of slide 10 shows is what the performance of those career centers over the last 3 years with those students who have matriculated out of the career center programs. And these numbers are duplicated percentages. So a student could have received employment right after finishing high school, but also be in a college or a 2-year or 4-year college, and also may have received a certificate in a particular professional area. Because the hallmark of our Career Center programs is that at the end of the course, you have to take a certification test and pass that certification test, which is a nationally standardized test, in order to be considered a professional in that particular vocation. And as you can see from this slide and this table, that a high percentage of the students are employed after completing the Career Center programs or going on to higher ed, and that we are preparing them for being employed through a certified or certificated program after they graduate from the program. Now, when we look at recent innovations over the last 4 years in Columbus City Schools, we have the Columbus Prep for Girls program as one of our more successful programs in the district. They have been rated effective for the last couple of years on the state report card, and they've met the value added measure for the last couple of years as well. And that value added measure is a measure of whether or not our schools are providing at least 1 year of academic growth to our students through the instructional strategies that we are using in the classroom. And so that's very important, because you do want to see at least 1 year of growth every year for our students so that they are matriculating through the system. And when we look at and the focus on the Columbus Prep for Girls program is that it's a college preparatory program, and all of the students in that building are girls. And so it's a gender...
How's the boys program doing?
They are continuous improvement, and they've been in continuous improvement the last couple years. They also have met the value added index as well, measure as well, over the last couple years.
How about international high school?
International is rated effective this year. And they,
What are the ratings? What is it effective? Give me this.
yes.
I don't know. Give me the.
Yep.
Yeah. What does it mean?
Absolutely, absolutely. In the state of Ohio for years, we have had a ranking system for ranking our school buildings and also our school districts. At the bottom of that ranking is academic emergency. Next up from academic emergency is academic watch. And then continuous improvement is in the middle. And then you have effective, and then you have excellent. And I believe maybe about 4 years ago, there was an additional ranking that was excellent with distinction that was added.
So where's international?
International is effective this year. So that would be the second to the highest level.
How about Eastmore?
Eastmore, I believe, is at effective as well, but I would have to double check that.
So on the international high school, are the at 11.5% of students who use English as a second language. Is there a large portion going to that school?
That's a very good question that I'd have to go back and take a look at to verify. The international school is not a school specifically for that population of schools. The international school is a school that is really designed around providing international learning experiences for the students who are in those programs. They have a very unique relationship with The Ohio State University, where they offer Russian at the school. And so it's really focused around a college prep curriculum.
So it's not a school
Right.
for those who
Are new to the
Got it.
district. Exactly.
got it. I got
Yeah.
it. Okay, that helps me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got it.
That's what these briefings are for, Mayor.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we do have a department of English as second learner students for that group of students that provide services, for all of the students that need those services in the district. And so when we look at the Eastmore Biomedical Program, this is a Project Lead the Way program. Project Lead the Way is a national organization that provides a very rigorous and college prep curriculum for those schools that belong to that program. And so Eastmore Academy, as a part of that biomedical program, are providing our students with a biomedical sciences focus to their curriculum. And we have a unique relationship between Eastmore Academy and Berwick K-8, where the students at the Berwick K-8 are in a program that is called the Gateway to Technology Biomedical Program. And those students from the Berwick K-8 are able to matriculate to the Eastmore Biomedical Program to maintain that consistent, rigorous focus on biomedical services. And I make sure I'm okay with time. Ooh, I need to move along here. Let me just say real quickly that we've had a very unique partnership with several universities in the region called the Higher Education Partnership, and through that partnership, we have been able to provide our students in high school with a variety of higher ed opportunities where they can take courses at those universities and colleges. The next slide is focused on the Board of Education's board priorities. The Board of Education this year has been working on identifying what are their academic priorities that they would like the administration to focus on. This slide, improve and increase public perception of CCS, expand learning opportunities. And Mr. Mayor, I know you've been really interested in pre-K, and that's where we've been really digging deep as a district into this issue of pre-K. We've got a committee that has been formed that has been working on developing a comprehensive strategy to present to the board how we might be able to address the needs at the pre-K level in Columbus City schools. And a real quick statistic for you is, as you saw earlier, there are about 4,500 students that are in our kindergarten program in the district. About 1,200 students come from our preschool program into our kindergarten program. We want to increase that number of students coming from our pre-K program to about 50% in the very near future. Because what we know from our data is that those students who come from our pre-K program, they are more likely to be kindergarten ready for the crawl test. About 89% of our students who go through our pre-K program are kindergarten ready for the kindergarten curriculum.
So the average, it's 34% overall, but only 11 that go through the school district's pre-K.
About 1,200 go through our pre-K program. Yeah, about 1,200 out of the
89% of them, so only 11% aren't kindergarten ready, but 34%
yes that go through
overall.
yes yeah. Just to make sure, of the 1,200 students, about 89% of them were kindergarten ready that came from our pre-K program, and about 11% were not considered kindergarten ready. Yes. Okay. Increased innovative programming. You have seen in the last slide some of our innovations, but some of the ideas that we're working on now is a leadership academy, because we know in Columbus City Schools, building leadership is a very, very important element of student success. And we're also working on this very unique idea that we're calling the Innovation Fund, that will allow those low-performing schools to partner with charter schools or district schools that are considered high performing, and through that partnership be able to improve the academic standing of the students in those low performing buildings. Educate and support parents. We're looking at a parent academy that would focus on making sure that our parents are not only advocates for their children, but they're teachers for their children, and that they are committed to lifelong learning. Preparing students for college and career. Mr. Real mentioned the Central Ohio Compact. We are very, very involved with the Central Ohio Compact with Columbus State Community College. And we're also investigating what is called the International Baccalaureate Career Certificate, which is a certificate focused on career training in addition to the International Baccalaureate Program, which is a very rigorous curriculum provided by a national organization. This is the last slide in my presentation, Pathway to Success. And the administration over the last year has been really working diligently on these three areas of early childhood development, high school readiness, and college and career readiness. These are some of the different initiatives that we've been focused on. I won't go through all of them due to the time, the hour of the afternoon, but just wanted to bring that to your attention, that these are some of the initiatives we've been working on. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stanford, and let me thank again Mark Reel and John Stanford for very comprehensive presentations. Mayor and Council President, we deliberately started today going deep into the data. And I know for those who are watching, they may want to spend some more time with this data, and I want to remind them that both of the presentations that we heard will be available on the city's website at mayor.columbus.gov/education, so that they can take some more time with these very complicated subjects. But as you shared in your remarks as well, it is important that we start by knowing where we are, and to not give short shrift to such important matters as student achievement and assignment patterns and student demographics. However, we have also highlighted today a couple of times in our questions that the real success of education in Columbus is going to be determined by how successful our students are in the world, and how much they are able to access the economic opportunities of the city, and how much they can help, in your words, create economic opportunities for the city. That's the subject we're going to turn our attention to next week. I know that your office will be sending out a press release and public information about the next session, which will be next week, and we will turn our attention to this broader subject of how all of the information we've heard today relates to the economic opportunities that students have in Columbus, and their ability to participate fully in the economic prosperity of this community. Again, Mayor and Council President Ginther, I thank you for allowing us to present this briefing to you and allowing me to participate in it, and I offer you the chance for any last words before we adjourn.
Well, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Stanford and Mark Reel on giving us this important information. I do have another question, and it relates to what I've been alluding through here and there throughout your presentations. And you gave us a good baseline of where we are and how we compare to other school districts, other cities, some of the good things that are happening. It would be helpful for us, for me, and President Ginther, to also understand demographics projected into the future, because educating our children is a process. It takes time, and I need to understand where you think, based upon information that I'm sure is available, MORPC or other places, where are demographics of our community going to be 10 years from now, 15 years from now? Because I'm asked the same thing of the workforce part of this. When we get to that, where is the industry sectors, which ones are growing, and where are we going to be looking at 10 years from now, 15 years from now when it comes to jobs? And we sort of have a handle on that, frankly, from work we've already done. What I'm asking from you is, demographically, based upon what you know now, what's going to be the racial diversity, the language diversity, all the issues you've raised about where we are now? Where will we be 10 years from now? What's the expectation? So that we can begin a planning process as part of what we're doing here as well.
Mayor, I'll make sure that we have that information as part of a future presentation. Some of it might come from these two gentlemen, but there, as you indicate, there are other good sources of that information in the community as well. So we'll add that to a future briefing. Anything else, Council President Ginther?
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it.
Hey, sorry you didn't get a copy.